Welcome.
Thank you.
Jade is so good at this. When she hosted, she was undoing their water, and when my brother came, it was just such a violent difference. It was like, there's your water. It was the most brotherly. So, Leah, please I don't know what to do with the water, but we're happy that you're here. Jade's a better hostess than I am a host.
No, I did notice that your office is set up much like mine. You've got the tissues and the water.
Yes.
So this is good.
I've never used tissues, but I understand people use them when they cry or have emotional responses to things. That's not true. I've cried before.
I moved into a new office a few years ago, and one of my clients, as an office warming gift, brought me a box of tissues. Just like, I thought you might want this for your office.
Yes. We should start off with maybe some story about that. Your office, your story, however you want to. Can you just describe to us who you are and what you're currently doing in life?
Sure. You'll have to forgive me. I'm a much better listener than speaker. So I'm not good at talking. So I am nervous. Just pretend like you're up here. Or I'm just going to pretend like this is our office.
Should we take the nerves off and just tell everybody what's going on with our socks situation?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Well, I'm really nervous.
This is a good practice in vulnerability,
it would be easy just to take that off if I can just say,
let's do it.
Jade, I accidentally put on gray socks with my brown shoes and brown pants. And I'm afraid that the longer I sit here, my pants are going to ride up and you're going to see my gray socks. And it's easier if I just let everybody know right off the bat I got gray socks on.
And I also am wearing gray socks. However...
Are they the same at least?
One is a waffle pattern and one is a straight pattern.
There. So nothing to be nervous about. Neither one of us can even put socks on, so let's try to give everybody advice. Okay, anyway, so I'm going to open my water while you tell your story.
Thank you for having me. I am a psychologist. I should also start by saying that I grew up in this church. We moved here when I was in 6th grade, so this kind of feels like home. And a shout out to Sean Barrett, wherever he is. We grew up together in this church in youth, and so it's, I know some of you, it's good to be back. So I'm a doctor of psychology. Just call me Aminda. I won't go through the whole places where I've been. I did go to undergraduate at Indiana Wesleyan, and then I went to graduate school in Arizona. Moved back here in 2007. I had a heart for working with people in the prison systems and with addiction, so I worked in some methadone clinics. I worked in the prison system. I worked for the court. I worked for community mental health. And in 2014, my job got cut. There were some new judges that came in, and so I thought, well, this is a good time to go into private practice. So I went into private practice, and if you know anything about me, business is not my strong suit, so I just want to help people. Like, put me in an office and one-on-one, and I'm good. But the Lord has had different plans for my business, so I could literally spend an hour telling you how listening to the Lord has grown my business and in turn is really helping our community. But in 2018, we had some people, I was sharing space with other women who were in the field, and we were working together but separately. So like we all have our own thing and we just kind of share space. And they asked if they could join me. That was 2018. 2022, we have 16 therapists in 2 locations, and every single therapist is a believer, which is a big deal in our field.
Yes.
So I should also start by saying that a lot of church people are really reluctant to hear a psychologist. They're like, oof. I get 2 responses when they find out what I do. And I don't like to tell people what I do because it's either, oh, I'm not going to talk anymore, you're going to analyze me. Or, like, let me tell you
please
everything.
Analyze me, here's
or I
everything.
have this friend, can you, But also...
I have this friend.
I have this friend
that looks just like me and has similar problems. Can you help him?
Yeah. But also, let's face it, people are really not trusting of us shrinks, I should say. I was doing a study in graduate school on spirituality, and I came across a statistic that blew my mind. 90% of Americans believe in a God of some sort. 80% of psychologists don't believe in a God.
Oh, my word.
And I read that, and I'm like that doesn't even make sense. Holy cow. But also, it really helps me understand why there's so many people that don't trust us, I should say, particularly in the church. So with that being said, the fact that we have 16 therapists, I have not marketed once. I have not asked for anybody to join me. I don't want the responsibility, but the Lord has different plans. So 16 people, every single one of them, hey, I heard about you, or would you mind taking me on? And trust me, you can ask my husband and the people around me. I'm like, I can't, I'm not cut out for this. I just want to help people. But anyway, they're amazing. I think there's a picture. If somebody can show a picture, there's us. That's my work family. And I can tell you they are the most amazing, just the most amazing women. I can tell you, they aren't just good at what they do. They're good people, just solid. And they're not just people I believe in God. They are working it. They love the Lord. They love people. We love each other. We were in a business meeting the other day, and one of them left, and she's like, bye, guys, love you. And somebody was like, how often do you hear that at work?
It's not very professional.
Love you, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyway.
And what an important time for this specific vocation in the Christian arena to be thriving.
Yeah.
The rise in mental health problems and everything that kind of what we're seeing as the ripple effect damage of social isolation and separation and loneliness. It's incredibly important that everyone is able to receive counsel in their mental health or unhealth from a Christian perspective. Yeah. That's just that. You're right. That statistic is mind-blowing. I'm just going to jump right into some of our questions here. Yeah. We've talked about 3 intense concepts: shame, grief, and addiction. And I know in my experience in the church, we tend to have this, if you are established in your faith, you kind of reach this place where you can't have problems anymore. And if someone does, we say, boy, they really have a testimony. And what we mean is they have a dramatic backstory. Right. We're going to have them share their testimony. And I've not always, later in my faith, about the last 10 years, I've really had a hard time with that, because when we say that you have to have a big backstory, lots of really dramatic problems to have a testimony, number one, that means that all of the people who really should be talking about what Jesus is doing in their life are so afraid to even admit that they have any problems or hang-ups. And number two, it's as if you have to have a criminal record for the glory of God and redemption to even be amazing in your life. Well, I was born in a Christian family. I went to Sunday school, so transformation and salvation's not quite as amazing in me as it would be in yikes over here. Here's my question. Who needs counseling?
I'm going to say everybody. Because to answer the question, who needs counseling, we think about what is mental health. So I feel like I can't answer that question until I answer the question, what is mental health? And I would say mental health is health. I'm going to say that again. Mental health is health. When I say we, I'm going to talk about kind of us in the field, therapists. We see, and I think this is true in your field too, we view the human being as biopsychosocial spiritual beings.
Yeah, I think we all totally understand what you just said there.
So,
but for those who may not have caught it, can you unpack it for a second?
Biopsychosocial spiritual. So we think nothing about taking care of our biology. It's what we put in our mouth, our nutrition, our working out. We go to the doctor if we're feeling crappy. I'm going to put mental health on hold first. So the psycho part. Social, it's who we hang out with. It's our support system. It's maybe our families, and then spiritual. And so we come to church, or we go in nature, or whatever the case is, how you express your spirituality. So the psycho part deals with feelings, thoughts. And by the way, there's a difference between the two. Call me crazy. I was 21 years old. I was talking with a friend of mine who was in a counseling program, and I was sharing her some stuff that I was going through at the time. And she looked up at me and she said, well, how do you feel about that? And because I'm super left brain and we didn't talk a lot about feelings growing up, I was like, well, I think blah, blah, blah. And she goes, no, I didn't ask what you thought about it. I asked how you felt about it. Completely different question, you guys. Completely different question. So I used to really get annoyed at the whole idea of a shrink where they're like, so how does that make you feel? And I'm like, oh, that's cringy. But really, thoughts and emotions are two completely separate things. So thoughts, emotions, it's about connection. It's about trauma. It's about biology. So our brain, our autonomic nervous system, how does that work? How does that respond to trauma, to connection, to attachment? So that's another thing. So the psycho piece kind of deals with all of that. So my answer to who needs counseling is if you have a brain, if you have attachments, if you have thoughts, if you have feelings, you probably need some counseling.
So part of what I hear you saying in this bio soup work
Psychosocial, spiritual.
Yes. Is you're pulling in all the different areas of our lives. So it may be tempting if we talk about mental health to just only restrict it to specific things. And sometimes that just comes across as, are you coping? Are you able to pull off looking like a normal person in society? And that means you're mentally healthy. What you're saying is let's broaden that up quite a bit and let's include, do you eat well and exercise? Do you burn through relationships, or are you able to build and sustain healthy relationships? That's the social part. Do you have good thought patterns? You're saying, let's not restrict it to this is the name of your problem. Let's broaden it out. That's why mental health is health. God did not make this tiny person. He made us into whole. So in my field, we would reflect on the word shalom, which is what people would greet each other with in the Bible, but it just means wholeness to you. And that's how they would greet each other. That's what shalom means, is recognizing that God make you as the biopsychosocial person.
Biopsychosocial, spiritual.
That's why pastors use shalom, so we don't have to use words like that.
I love that, wholeness. Wholeness, and I think that's the part that people miss is for all of the reasons that you've talked about in your sermon series, there is a stigma that mental health is crazy. Mental health is a diagnosis. And for some people, there is a diagnosis attached. But what I tell people, diagnosis is just a name for the cluster of symptoms that you're experiencing.
Yep.
You go to the doctor and you're coughing and you've got a fever, and it's his job to say, okay, well, this cluster of symptoms is this name. So we have to change how we think about what mental health is, because it's not just crazy. It's not just people that really can't get their crap together. Yeah. Sorry, I should have said that from stage, but.
Yeah, it's too late. You understand? Here's something to remove the stigma. My job as a person is to preach the Word of God, except for this month, just about every single week from right here. And Friday is my first counseling appointment with one of the people that's up there, and I can't wait. Because I know that I maintain the capacity to pray and worship God, to understand His Word, and to lead people, and even to discern and proclaim His truth to a group of people. And part of that, the healthiness that enables me to do that, also allows me to see that I need help. There's something that you told us about the counselor's couch. Can you share that with everybody?
Yes, I can. So our perspective of counseling, and when I say our, I mean kind of the therapist world in general, is a lot different than many people who aren't in the field. I learned something in graduate school, and through discussions with other therapists, I've learned that they were also told this in graduate school, that the healthiest person in the family is the one sitting on your couch.
Why? Because the reason that's a fascinating statement is we would say that the family's fine and the unhealthy one goes to counseling. And what you're saying is it's probably the opposite. Not every time, but often it's the healthiest one in the dysfunctional family that went to counseling. Why is that?
Because the person sitting on your couch is saying something isn't okay, and I don't want to live like this the rest of my life, and I want to do something different. And I'm okay to reach out for help because I don't want to do this, and something around me isn't right. One of the examples I use in therapy for people maybe who have been scapegoated, or they're afraid that them becoming healthier is going to change their dynamics. I read a really interesting interview from, I'm blanking on his name, Al Roker. You guys know who Al Roker is? He's a weather guy. Read a really interesting article, and to me, I'm like, this is it. He and his wife struggled with obesity. His wife decided to go get gastric bypass surgery. Nobody's going to say that's not a healthy thing to do. She was trying to take control of her health. As she did that, she started working out. She started changing her friends. No longer did she want to sit on Fridays and eat pizza. She wanted to go for walks. And Al Roker was like, what's going on? And he shared that they almost got a divorce because she started, bettering herself, and he was sort of left behind. And this is what in the field we call disrupting homeostasis. And so Al Roker said, homeostasis is balance. And when we get in family systems, we kind of come up with these roles where we do whatever we do to maintain the family's balance, including staying in dysfunctional roles. So the healthy person on the couch, a lot of times, isn't doing the unhealthy thing, but the response is nobody around them knows what to do with it. And so it's much easier to say, well, you're the one that needs help.
Yes. Yeah. In my field, we talk about God creating us. The first thing, actually, we'll talk about this in the Genesis series very early on. The first thing God said is not good. It's not good for man to be alone. Mm-hmm. We are designed to be connected to other people. Mm-hmm. In your field, you call that a system. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think we have time to go down that cave, but the entire concept of I want to be different than my system, and your system could be your community, your neighborhood, your family, your extended family, your group of friends. In Rich's talk last week, we heard about removing your habits, hang-ups, and no, we didn't. We talked about people, places, and things. Mm-hmm. People, places, and things. The reason is it's very difficult if you're healthy enough to see you're unhealthy to remove yourself from the system because the system wants to pull you back in.
Yeah.
Next question. We've really broadened who needs counseling. We pretty much just said everybody. But what is counseling? We might, if we look at the three scenarios, we might say at some point, each of those three people had someone professional do something for them. And I'm not a professional. And you are a professional. And you're telling us what feels like a commissioning, like there's something we're supposed to do, but we did not get your education, we don't have your job, your qualifications. Are you saying there's something that is non-professional, informal counseling? What is counseling?
Yeah. I can tell you what counseling is not. Counseling is not advice giving.
Not advice giving?
Not advice giving.
Yes.
I personally will rarely make an advice to someone like, you need to do this, because I'm not living their life. That has to be something that they have to come to on their own understanding. So whenever you hear somebody, well, my therapist told me blah, 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 I always cringe when I hear that, because I'm like, either that therapist is putting her own stuff on whatever, or that person heard what they wanted to hear or needed to hear, and they feel validated in that. So regardless, it's not advice giving.
So if we're looking at a neighbor and thinking, I should probably go provide counsel, I think I can fix it. Probably just stay home.
Yes. Okay, so you used a trigger word for me, fix it.
Yeah.
People do not want to be fixed. They want to be heard.
Can you just say that one more time?
I will say that one more time for the people in the back. People don't want to be fixed. They want to be heard.
Yeah.
And because this is a profession where it's not just about feelings and feeling nice, I attended a training on Thursday that was way more intense than what I planned to. It was on polyvagal theory, which is...
Yeah, I think I went to the same training.
Oh, my word.
You said
You
poly? It's polyvagal. Go ahead.
So the training is on the autonomic nervous system, and it was it was basically like a neurobiology course in like 8 hours. But hearing a neurobiologist who's talking about this nerve that goes from our brain all the way to our stomach. And he said, he's not a clinician. He said, people don't want to be fixed, they want to be heard, because literally there are mechanisms that go on in our bodies when we feel heard and when we feel understood.
Oh, my word.
This was shocking to me as someone that didn't really grow up valuing an emotional expression or emotional response. There's actually a little, when you hear, or when you have an emotion that's correctly identified, maybe we're talking and I say, wow, that had to have felt so embarrassing for you. And that resonates with you, there's literally like a chemical that kind of squirts in your brain that calms your system down. I mean, this is biology, people. This is not just touchy-feely stuff. Like, we want to be heard. And so counseling isn't just about like, you know, there's so much to it. But you don't have to be sitting as a therapist with all the education to be able to listen to somebody, to be able to hear what they're saying, to be able to reflect like, wow, that must have been really difficult for you, and then to name the emotion.
Yeah, which takes tons of pressure off of us because we don't need answers, we just need ears.
You just need ears.
This is exactly what Jesus did with Zacchaeus. Jesus, there's no record that he says anything other than, hey, I'm coming to your house for dinner. And then he just describes himself by saying, I came to seek and to save. Not to fix and to save, to seek and to save. All he did was sought him out, had dinner with him, and it says that Zacchaeus' life was transformed, but we never see that Jesus told him to do that or give him any instruction. It's just the power of being present and listening.
Yes. We shared at dinner the other night, the story of Hagar.
Yes.
So if anybody isn't familiar with the story of Hagar, she was a slave. She worked for, or was a slave for, Abraham and Sarah. Sarah couldn't bear children, so she was basically given to Abraham, which in my world, from a trauma lens, I'm like, she was probably sexually assaulted. She bore this child, they took the child from her, and then they banished her. And I'm looking at this from a trauma lens, like, oh my goodness, this poor person.
Yes.
So she ends up leaving because Abraham and Sarah started mistreating her, and she peaced out. And on her way in the desert, alone, who comes to her but the Lord? Hagar means the Lord sees me. And the Lord said 2 questions. He said, where have you been, and where are you going? And I think that's so powerful for us as counselors. He didn't come in and tell her what to do. He saw her. He pursued her. Where have you been, and where are you going? And I think that's another thing that we really focus on in counseling. Where have you been, and how does that inform where you are right now in the present?
Yeah.
And then where are you going in the future? You know, and how can you help your insides match your outsides so that you can get to where you need to go?
That right there. So imagine that you're the one that's in the desert, and Hagar sits down and she tells you her story. As she's telling you her story, all you're doing is listening. She's reading your face like mad to see what you think of her story. Can you talk to us about what it is? I know that counseling is not supposed to be tons of coaching and fixing, but we do say some things, and we say even in our posture, even in our breathing and our eyes and in faith, we're speaking constantly. What is it to create a safe space where the person who their actual system needs to be heard, as you said, their biological system needs to be heard, and that could be the beginning of transformation. It's the door of hope swinging wide open for them. And all we have to do is create a safe space for them to just say whatever they want, even if we disagree with what they're saying. How do we create a safe space for that kind of thing to happen?
I'm a trauma-informed therapist, as are all of my people. And so creating a safe space is like number one in our office. And it starts by having an environment that's hospitable. You know, offering the water and the tissues.
Yeah,
you're
I'm good
automatically,
at that, but,
you can work on that a little
Yes,
bit.
I can work on that.
But no, you're absolutely right. It is in posture. So I can brag about my polyvagal theory because it's helping me integrate this information. So the polyvagal nerve that goes down to your stomach is actually attached to facial, to muscles in your eye and your nose and your mouth and your ears. And there's all of these micro movements that happen. And we have this amazing ability. It's called noroception. Noroception is our ability to perceive things outside of our conscious awareness.
What?
So we can perceive, like if I can see that you're feeling uncomfortable, I can sense that.
Maybe even before I'm totally aware that I'm uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah, hyper
Yep.
awareness.
Yep. So it's kind of like quite literally we're primed to be on the defensive, right? So one thing that we can do, and we have to practice this, it doesn't come naturally for a lot of people. Side note, I used to get really annoyed when people were like, oh, you went to school for a lot of years to listen. And like, I kind of thought, I do a heck of a lot more than listen.
It's like when people say, man, you get paid a lot to just preach on Sundays.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like I kind of used to take offense to it.
Kind of sells the job short, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
it does. But now, being in this field for 25 years,
Yeah.
I'm like, it really, people need to learn how to listen.
Yes.
And so now I take it as a compliment, because listening is something that we're not very good at. So back to your question, what can we do to create a safe space? Posture is really important. If I sit there like this, I'm demonstrating to you like
Closed off.
not open. So kind of sitting like this, eye movement, nodding your head like, oh, wow, kind of those mumblings of what we do. This seems kind of basic, right? But for some people, they really don't see it.
Yeah.
I am shocked by the number of people, like I do a lot of couples work, and they'll come and sit on the couch and they'll have an issue, and I'm watching, and I can't tell you the number of times where I'll say, can you please turn to her and say that to her? Or
Wow.
they'll, it's kind of amazing. So again, being in this field long enough, I'm like, listening really is something that we have to be able to practice.
There's something that and I just want to turn the corner into the last concept here. If I don't want to be sitting with this person, and I do think that they deserve what has happened to them, and I have all kinds of nasty opinions about them, and I'm trying to bite my tongue, and I'm just doing this because, I guess I'm supposed to be here. Can I fake it? Because what you're talking about, an intricate tie of even my facial muscles and how I'm interrelating to you. If 80% of counselors don't believe in God, you're saying that you're building a practice that does. Isn't there something about Christ within us, the gospel alive within us, that is being communicated even through just the tiniest little movements in my eye? And what we're saying is, just let that be there and don't fake it.
Yes, I'm saying that. I also I just feel like this is such a loaded question. There's so many things about listening well and creating a safe space. I think I sent a slide of the Chinese symbol. Can you guys put that up there? No? Huh?
They don't have it.
They don't have it? Okay. So active listening, good active listening, is about paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally.
Oof.
And I'm going to say,
Four
paying
elements.
attention on purpose, in the moment, non-judgmentally. So paying attention in the moment, in other words, really sitting here and being present with you, like not thinking about all of the stuff that I have to do later, or how annoyed I am, or being distracted on whatever, but it's paying attention in the moment, non-judgmentally. Non-judgmentally means I have to suspend my judgment, which means I have to be self-aware. So I would say the first thing that people can do to be a good listener is to learn to be self-aware. In other words, I have to know what my stuff is that's getting in the way of me being present with you.
If I'm not listening to myself, I can't listen to you either.
You're exactly right. If you can't listen to those cues, and we do a lot of training on self-disclosure and things like that in a session, and I think the biggest thing is being aware of what's my stuff that's getting in the way of me being able to connect with you. Whether it's bias, whether it's judgment, whether it's busyness, whether it's my own internal noise, whether I'm hungry, whether I'm tired, that I think we can actually be a better listener with people if we start to listen to ourselves.
Wow. That just requires quiet. This is a very noisy world we live in.
I'm going to disrupt the quiet for a minute.
Yes.
A good question to ask yourself. We spend a lot of time in our society learning how to talk and being talkers. But when you're listening, wait. W-A-I-T. Why am I talking? It's a good question about why do I need to respond? What do I need to say? I don't need to fill the space.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about just being with that person.
Yeah.
I've been listening to the sermons, and when you were talking with your brother, and he said sometimes I just wanted somebody to be there in the space with me.
Yeah.
And I think being a good listening, you don't have to always fill the space. You don't have to talk. Just being present with that person and transparent enough to say, I don't really know what to say right now.
Yeah.
Like I teach people, if you're cueing your body and you don't know what to say to this person who you can't relate to, or you've never walked in their shoes, or you can't find anything to empathize with, just say, I'm really sorry. I literally don't have words right now to say what I want to say to you. And that alone is that's enough.
Yeah.
That alone is enough.
Yeah. This doesn't mean you didn't
In that
hear.
moment,
It just means that you did hear and you're considering and you're all the way in it and you don't have any plans to fix it. And, yeah. When we were planning this, I told you there's 100 ways that this conversation could go well. We picked the best one. This was fantastic. Is there anything, before we close it up, is there a question I didn't ask? Is there something that you wanted to share that you want to leave us with?
I think the only thing that's coming to mind is in something that I hear a lot on the couch, that's really, really important to our field, is something called confidentiality. And people come to therapy because they know that I'm not allowed to tell anybody. And there's safety in that.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, do you have to be a paid professional to be able to listen well? Part of being a good listener is protecting that person's privacy. In layperson's terms, that means no gossip. That means when they come to you, they need to know, or when they say something, that's safe, that's protected. You've seen these women, and we live in a small town. I can tell you that I have no idea who you're seeing on Friday. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because I can promise you, unless we have a signed release of information, nobody is talking about anybody's stuff. And we do that in the field to protect the person.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have that when you're sharing with a partner. If somebody shares something with you, and if they hear you talking about someone else, guess what? The message is that I'm not going to be safe with that person. I'm not going to open up.
Yeah. Yes.
So really, just kind of honor this. The other thing was honor and honesty. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honor and honesty. But it's being able to kind of sit, and honor and honesty is this idea, and it's a spiritual idea too, that we can both honor someone and be honest with them. And as a person who's trying to be a better person, I can be honest with my struggles and still have honor.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Counseling and listening does not mean being permissive to destructive behavior. And you're saying we should not be judgmental necessarily in that moment, but that doesn't mean we never develop the relationship to a place where it's appropriate to say, I have an idea, and maybe suggest an alternate route. That's what it is to be honorable and honest at the same time, rather than protecting somebody's destructive path and lying, basically, in our counseling. Can we join together in thanking Dr. Amynda Rhodes for this?